This is NFA Talk, the show that talks about guns and gun rights, keeping you up to date with what's currently going on, from the newest guns, promotions, and events, plus how we're lobbying for your rights.
All right, the Season 2 wrap-up show of NFA Talk. Joining me tonight, we have our interim president, Blair Hagen, our interim vice president, Rick Igercich, and our man in Ottawa, Charles Zach. How you doing, guys? How's it going? I hope you all had a great holiday. We're moving into the new year shortly, and unfortunately, we're pre-recording this because it's the busy season. We were going to plan everything live, and things just didn't work out with the timing. So this is going to be one of our few shows that it is pre-recorded, but we're still gonna go through everything that happened in season 2. So where do you guys want to start? I mean, I guess we should start probably from the beginning, right? Season 2, we went into it very rough. We still had the Liberal government in power. They're still in power now, but we were at that point, we were fighting C-21, and we really talked about it with episode 4 there, and all the implications that was going to come in with C-21. I don't know if anybody wants to talk about that.
Yeah, there's a lot of confusion about C-21. A lot of people still think the bill is before Parliament. The bill did die when the federal election was called. Liberals will probably bring it back in some shape or form. I mean, this is one of their issues that they really want to communicate to their supporters, the very, very few diehard supporters of civil disarmament in Canada. But it is one of their things. They may try to bring it back in some form, but again, the issue is a little more complicated than just passing legislation, because the bill does encroach on provincial authority over property and will be challenged by several provinces in Canada if it ever sees the light of day. Right.
So Blair, they kind of promised that they were bringing back C-21, but what it looks like is they're going to bring it back plus. We're also looking at a possible handgun ban, and there's rumors that the anti-gun groups have been posting up other firearms that they would like to see added to the list. I mean, as well, because you work at a firearms store, like the FRT is consistently changing bi-weekly, right? There's a few more guns that just got added to the list.
Yeah, and that's very dangerous, and it's very irresponsible as well, because the greatest number of these firearms were in the non-restricted class, no registrations associated with them. The government has not or should not have any idea where they are, who owns them. The number of Canadians that this affects, and we've seen this previously with other actions of this government, which are just as irresponsible as this, the issue with the Ruger 1022 magazines. Simple changes in legislation that they think are simple have wide ramifications on Canadians who've demonstrated that they are law-abiding, want to be law-abiding, and this government doesn't care. This government doesn't care how law-abiding you are, as long as you fall in line with their edicts. And that's very dangerous, because I think all of you will agree we're seeing a lot of sentiment out there going, do I want to continue to be law-abiding? Can I continue to be law-abiding? When people start questioning the law and questioning the intentions of the government of Canada, that's very dangerous.
C-21 did die on the order table, before the election, of course, but our new public safety minister, Marco Mendocino, has basically reiterated that will be resurrected, like you said, Blair, in some shape or form. But I think it'll be more than what they were talking about in C-21. One of the major things in C-21 was that it was going to be there may be some kind of a buyback, maybe not, right? Well, they've come out and actually said that it will be a mandatory buyback. Now, what's interesting about his statement, he basically said, he prefaced it by saying that we are listening to Paulie, the docs, Wendy Tsukier, and everybody else, right? So, and I've done a little research in the lobbying registry, and I'm not seeing a lot of official communications going on between Bill Blair, public safety, PMO, or anybody else from these so-called anti-gun groups out there. So to me, it looks like they're either mining this stuff from social media, or there's some kind of clandestine communications going on in the back alley that is not being registered in the lobby, which is actually against the law. So, and that happens all the time. I get that. Of course, we don't do that. I promised that we would always do this above board, and we have, and our record shows that. Last year, we had 20 lobby communications, and that's all there in on the lobby registry under lobbycanada.gc.ca. So you can check that out. But just peruse through there and see what's going on. What's really interesting in this, and you'll find this very amusing, is that like Wendy Tsukier used to be of the Coalition for Gun Control, used to be very heavy into the lobbying of the government, and she was actually paid to do this, which is ludicrous in itself. But she is still a lobbyist for Ryerson University, and they've had a lot of interaction with the government under the premise of research and analysis. Nothing with public safety, nothing with Bill Blair, and nothing with Marco either. So once again, we're seeing liberals are saying we're listening to the anti-gun lobby. Well, are these secret talks? And here's the real rub. We've been trying to talk with the PMO, Bill Blair, Marco Mendicini for a long time now, and he's not talking, right? The PMO last year had 4,291 official communications, and public safety had 1,113. So they're talking to people, but they're not talking to us.
Why would this surprise you? This has nothing to do with public safety. This is entirely political. It has nothing to do with public safety. I'm not surprised. But the fact of the matter is the government will use pressure groups like Wendy Sukier's to sort of buttress their arguments when it's needed. Right now, it's not needed. The government has its own agenda. It's always been this way, even in back in gun registry days. I don't think, there's a tendency here to be exasperated, and I know we're all exasperated by the political treatment of this issue, but we got to get over it and just have to come to the conclusion they don't care. They're not going to listen to us. They're not going to listen to anybody in the farms community. They're not going to listen to rights and freedoms voters. They're going to follow whatever agenda that they feel they need to follow. They've basically written off most of the country, and they're comfortable with that.
Right. So we were talking, Charles, you were talking about the mandatory buyback. Now, Rick, you're also a gunsmith. So are you going to be prepared to do these deactivations if that's the case? Because I hear the government's going to give you an option. You either hand it in, they give you a very small amount of money for your purchase or for your firearm, or you can have it deactivated at their cost. So being a gunsmith, and Rick, I know you work with other gun shops. Are you going to be participating in this deactivation?
I will not be participating in the deactivation. They sent out a letter about 6 months ago to register yourself as, I don't have a copy of it right here, but they sent a letter out to register yourself as applied to be a gun deactivator. The gun shop where I work will not have any part of deactivating guns and turning guns and destroying guns. I don't know what the consensus amongst the gunsmiths that I know, not very many of them are going to be doing that. There is one shop in Ontario that I know applied for it and will be doing it, but I will not be. I refuse to deactivate perfectly good firearms for that reason. Now, if it was for another reason where a guy just wanted it deactivated, not as far as it being in the OIC, and somebody just wanted a wall hanger for safety, I have no problem with that. But as far as deactivating guns, because that's the only way you keep them, it's not going to happen in my world.
Good stance.
Yeah, I think people have to realize that even if there was like 100% participation by every gunsmith in the country, there aren't enough in Canada to do this. So it's another case of the government going, well, we're gonna play hardball with this, and they're gonna have to make a decision. And even if you chose to have it deactivated, it's very unlikely that you're going to find a gunsmith who's going to be able to do it for you within the confines of whatever schedule the government comes up with. They're really dreaming in Technicolor. They did not think this through. They didn't think gun registry through. They didn't think C68 through. All of their other decisions, they're certainly not thinking this through either, because there's a lot of logistics that go into this. So I don't know. Maybe they're just not thinking. Maybe they are that dense. Because if you know anything about this issue, and here we go again. I mean, we're gun guys. We have a certain expertise in this, especially as it pertains to business and industry and the way things happen. And you point these things out to them, and you get the blank stare. It's like, well, this can't be. Our experts have told us that it's possible. Well, it's not possible. I think the government is going to find that it's going to be very difficult to pursue whatever agenda, whatever schedule they want to do with these things, because it's just logistically, I'm sorry, there's just no other way to say it. It's logistically impossible. I know most gunsmiths will refuse to participate just on principle, okay, because they understand what the government's trying to do here. At the end of the day, this is the Liberals' problem. And if they want to work themselves into a situation where they can't get out of, like they did with gun registry, and it certainly appears that they're doing it, they're doing a very good job.
And it's not just that their guidelines are vague as far as deactivation is. They basically don't have any guidelines because, like you said, Blair, they don't know what they want. They don't know what actually makes a firearm inert.
No.
There's a lot of people out there that could, no matter what you do to a firearm with a file and a hammer and a buddy with a lathe, can fix it. So, it just, it's vague. So what do they want?
And
they don't
here's
even know
the
themselves.
thing.
So,
And here's the thing: under the guidelines that they do have, every gunsmith who does a deactivation in Canada must personally sign off on that. Your name, the gunsmith's name, is permanently attached to that deactivation. And if that firearm is recovered at a crime scene, you're on the hook. Uh-oh. If it's recovered at a crime scene, reactivated, they're not just going after the perp it was taken off of. They're going after the gunsmith who said it was deactivated. So you bear personal liability for this as well. And I know we've made when they brought those guidelines in, when they brought that requirement in, we decided that, well, we're just not going to deactivate firearms anymore because it's just too dangerous. And again, it gives you an indication of the Liberals working against themselves here. It's like, well, we're going to make all these gunsmiths responsible so that, well, if the gun shows up reactivated, they take responsibility too. And now they propose this where we want every business in Canada to sign on to be deactivators of firearms. And it's like, why would we participate in this offense against citizenship? And number two, why would we assume personal liability for a gun that might one day wind up at a crime scene? It's really, I can't understand it. It's like they're running around like a bunch of chickens with their heads cut off and thinking, yeah. Aren't we brilliant? They're not.
This is totally in line with the modus operandi of Justin Trudeau, right? So he will speak, these words into the universe, and he thinks that they're gonna happen. And then when they don't happen, he takes credit for them for actually happening. He lives in some kind of a surreal world of his own. Okay, like the record is plain. He says things, he wants to change things, they don't change. He takes, he takes credit for, the change that didn't happen, and he goes on, right? But just to get back to your point about, about him thinking, or the Liberals thinking, who's thinking are the people that are affected. So they just came out with a little blurb the other day about how many people have actually surrendered guns during the so-called grace period. And that would be a big zero. Yep. Nobody has given in anything. That should be a big signal for the Liberals to understand that it crossed the line. Like you said, Blair, what we're forced into a situation, right? Do we kowtow to a bad law that targets the innocent with unjust laws? Or do you just resist this and hope for the best down the road, and hopefully somebody will come to their senses?
the sad thing is, I don't think they care. Okay, they certainly didn't care back during gun registry. Well, if a few farmers don't register their guns and they're seized by police, we'll just charge them. Law's the law. And look at the civil disobedience associated with that law. They really don't. If you own a gun in Canada, you are not their people. Okay, and they will come for your rights and freedoms. They don't care about the ramifications. That was certainly demonstrated all through the life of this government with the little changes that they made here and there that threw hundreds of thousands of Canadians into legal turmoil, legal predicament where they could be charged. And it's like, well, that's your problem. I mean, the onus is on you to know what the law is and comply with it, not on us to explain it to you or to enact reasonable laws. And, it really baffles me that people can't see through a lot of this stuff. And again, I mean, if you're not familiar with this issue, if you're not familiar with firearms in Canada, the way that they're owned, possessed, bought, sold, used, it really goes over your head. But the fact of the matter is the number of Canadians being that have been attacked by this government is phenomenal. And I can tell you right now, it's going to catch up with them.
Absolutely. So, and to add on to that, I mean, like the way the laws work too, May 1st, 2020, like you could have had a non-restricted firearm that was affected by the ban. You could be out in the bush hunting, and at, what time was it? It was around 11 o'clock in the morning. Mr. Trudeau came on the TV and said, as effective immediately, all these guns are banned. You're out in the bush. You don't have you don't have a radio. You don't have a cell phone. You're out there having a good time. You're shooting on Crown land, and you walk out to your truck and there's Mr. Police Officer, and you're now breaking the law, right?
No different than the Ruger 1022 mags. You could have been on the range that day when they banned them, and you pulled onto the range as a law-abiding citizen, and you leave the range as a criminal because you got a 25 round mag in your possession.
And it's been a few years since they did that, and people are still on ranges with those magazines. They don't know.
But here's the thing, Blair, and you touched on it exactly. Okay. We don't have the resources to enforce it, right? You can make up all these bad laws all over the place and create an atmosphere of fear, but people are not being charged. I mean, we have probably 5 million people out there with guns, right? And we have 2.1 million, they're actually, recorded, but we're not seeing, a concerted effort by the government to go after these people. They're just letting them, they've disappeared into the ether. They don't want to deal with this because they know that if they go down that road, it's going to go bad for them, very bad.
But it would. But what is taking place is selective enforcement, and I think that's all that is envisioned here. They do not see a lot of compliance with these laws, and frankly, they don't care about that. If you want to comply, great. You further our agenda. But if you don't want to comply, good, make yourself a criminal. That furthers our agenda too. So they see it as a win-win. People worry about, geez, they're going to come to my door and take my guns away. No. It doesn't happen that way. It's selective enforcement.
Yeah. So
suddenly, one day, your number is up, and they choose you.
And in the case of registered firearms, they know you have them. They know who has the AR-15s, but they're holding your useless piece of paper called a PAL over your head because they're not gonna reissue it if you don't turn those guns in that you're in possession of, and they know that you're in possession of.
And it goes right back to the issue of the license. Everybody thought, hey, it's benign. Why not? Just get a license, no problem. No, this is the problem. Once they mandate a license for the simple ownership or possession of property, look what happens.
And fundamentally, we're talking about prohibition. And we've gone through this in various forms in history, and it always fails, right? Prohibition naturally in an economy creates a free market. And I'm talking about the black market now, but that's not regulated. Is this what Canada wants? And the Liberals will wear this. They're going to ban this, and people are still going to want to shoot their guns, and they're going to want ammunition, and they will get them. And there's people out there that will supply them, right? So, we're back to, the 1920s with the booze, right? We're back, in time with the drugs and everything else. It didn't work, right? People got their stuff.
again, they don't care. We're talking about compliance here, and does the government not realize that there's going to be massive non-compliance with these things, as there were with the gun registry? Okay, no, they don't care. Not compliance, non-compliance, not an issue, as long as we can say we have it.
It's a big fishing expedition part of it too, because some people will comply. Then they're going to say, well, you know what? We got some guns off the street here. Some people didn't comply. It's a vicious circle. If you don't comply, you become a criminal. So basically you're a criminal overnight. You're a law-abiding citizen the day before. So now you've got this possibility hanging, or this cloud hanging over your head, that when are they going to show up at my house and put the handcuffs on me, and I'm going to go for a ride in the back of some cruiser? They're using psychological warfare in a way with this whole deal.
You know what, Rick? I think you hit it right on the head. You hit the nail on the head. This is psychological warfare against the firearms community. We are one of the chief group of Canadians who really believe in rights and freedoms. There's lots of people who support us, who support our Canadian right and cultural tradition of firearms ownership. But historically in Canada, people in firearms community have been the ones who got out there and fought for it. And you know what? We defeated the gun registry. We defeated part of a massive liberal program. And you know what this is? This is payback.
Well, we're just going to have to defeat the next one.
Exactly. We've done it before.
This is not our first rodeo, right?
Yeah.
So, going on with 2021 season 2, what else have we done? We for the first time we did an actual live NFA talk on the road. That was in Hamilton. That was a lot of fun. That was during our meet and greet that we had at the Silverdale Gun Club. We held like a barbecue, and we did some shooting with our members, and it was greatly attended. We had guys, I don't know what, over 100 people there, right? I wasn't counting, but it was like, it was nonstop going all day. As soon as it started, people started showing up, and I looked at my watch and I was like, wow, we're starting to take down already. Where did the time go? Right? Like I didn't even stop for lunch. Somebody threw a water at me and said, hey, keep hydrated, because it was just nonstop. It was a lot of fun shooting with our members. And Charles, you were there. Rick, you were there. Unfortunately, Blair was, he wasn't able to come out for this event.
And we got to do a thing that we very seldom get to do. We got most of the board of directors together, and we got to actually shoot some guns together and have some fun and shoot some targets and have a little grudge match here and there. It was great. Shoot some stuff that we brought Prohibited stuff, stuff like that people don't see too often. Nice. We brought some of that and let anybody who wanted to shoot it. We brought the guns. You just have to supply the ammunition. It was a great day.
And you know what, Charles? Rick, I was going to say, like, I think that was one of the guns that was on one of the firing lines, right?
Yeah.
That seems to drive people. They want to try these guns that you can't just, unless you have the 12.6 license, you can't go out and purchase one of these. So the next generation of firearms owners are interested. They want to try shooting these. They want to see why did this government prohibit it? Like, why is it any different than a normal restricted handgun? I don't know if Rick, if you got another handgun there.
We could do a little bit of a side by side here. This is a Smith & Wesson Model 19 2.5 inch, considered a snub nose gun revolver, and this here is I got to bring it up here. This is a Glock 48, and if you compare the two, you can see that the Glock 48 is actually smaller than the Smith & Wesson Model 19 2.5 inch snub nose. So, there's our
where's the logic, right?
Laws. Where's the logic to that? People look at these guns laying on a bench and go, well, that Model 19 is bigger than that Glock 48. Well, yeah, but the Glock 19 is prohibited by 1 3/4 inches. By 1 3/4 inches in barrel length, although it's a bigger gun to start with. There's no rhyme or reason. And, Blair's been talking about this for years, and I have too. There's just no rhyme or reason.
No, there is no logic to it. And if they were to sit down and try to make a practical explanation of these things, they could not do it. But they've never had to do that. Okay. Unfortunately, when it comes to this type of legislation, too often by a lot of people and certainly by media, it's accepted at face value. Well, it must be needed, and the police say they need it and support it, so it must make sense for public safety. And when practical demonstration is called for, it's just avoided. We're the gun lobby. We have ulterior motives.
Yes.
So therefore, we don't need to answer your questions. We'll ignore you.
What's interesting about what you just said there is that, Trudeau always comes out, we want to be transparent, we want to be collaborative. It's all baloney. Okay. So,
yeah.
And they were forced to actually respond to a judicial call because of the court cases that are in play to justify why they came out with the OIC.
Yeah.
And what did they do? Right? They used the Secrecy Act, that's 39, to hide the reason for banning the guns. So, what? They don't have a reason. Okay. And, I guess hiding your non-evidence, I guess, is a tactic. But once again, you have to understand that, this government is not about the truth. They're lying to us constantly. They're covering things up. They're spinning things. And like you said, there's an agenda. The laws make no rhyme or reason. And, like I said, how much does a citizen need to take before they just opt out, right? And don't play the game anymore.
Ultimately, at the end of the day, that's up to that individual citizen. But I'll tell you right now, no Canadian citizen should be put in that place.
Absolutely.
My God, I my worst moments, and I've been at this a long time. I understand how politics is played, but in my worst moments, and it does really affect me because of the industry I'm in. I sit back and I go, my God, how could any halfway responsible government do this to its citizens? Whether you like them or not, whether you agree with them or not. I mean, and the analogy I always use is going back to the Second World War, when Canadians of Japanese descent were targeted. Okay, because December 7th, 1941, Pearl Harbor gets attacked, and the United States certainly took action against its citizens of Japanese descent, but then the Canadian government decided to do the same thing, based on, a very real fear of an attack on the West Coast by the Imperial Japanese Army, Navy, and government. But to target your own citizens, and I think today we can all agree that was uncalled for, unconstitutional, and unconscionable for those Canadians of Japanese descent to be treated the way they were. And it's not because there's no racial favoritism here. Those boundaries should not exist. If you're a Canadian citizen, you have certain rights in this country, and no government has the right to step on them in that way. And I think we're facing a very similar situation today. Then, it's public safety. Well, we don't know which one of these people are spies or saboteurs. So we'll just take them all and we'll put them in camps. We'll treat them fairly, and they'll have 3 squares, 3 hots and a cot a day, and they'll just have to stay there until the war is over. And of course, we'll take their property for safekeeping, and it will become property of the government of Canada, but it's necessary for the war effort. No, I think we all agree today that no, it was not necessary for the war effort. It was wrong. Canada has taken responsibility for that. But again, today, Liberals are doing the same thing, or attempting to do the same thing.
Well, you know what? We're spread out across Canada, and our people, our board of directors are talking to firearms people all the time, day in and day out, and people are fed up. I've never seen so many fed up people with the laws. And it's just not the firearms owners, it's their families. Because, Grandpa had this semi-automatic 22 that he's had since the 40s, and now it's questionable whether or not it's going to be legal down the road. And people are looking at it and saying, well, Jesus, you know what? That's Grandpa's personal property. How can they take that away from him? Or, even my dad's passed away for a long time, but my dad had an AR-15. If he was alive today, and I'd be upset if somebody wanted to take his AR-15 A1 that he bought in the early 70s away from him. people, it's just not firearms people that are getting mad about this. There's a lot of people getting mad, and the word is spreading. And it just, every day, people are getting pushed more and more and back more into a corner. And from what I've been hearing, people aren't going to stand for it.
Blair, I was going to say too about, this change in governments, and we're not, or governance. Okay, we're not seeing the principled ruling, by the Constitution, trying to protect people's rights, and that making that sort of front and forefront of a free country. So we've slid now into something else. It's they're calling it governance by will. So if I have the will to do something, I will do it until I'm legally challenged, and that's kind of where we are. Now, the Liberals are doing this and justifying it by polling. So what they're saying is that if the majority of the mob out there, want what I am willing and are agreeing with my will, then the rights of those people that are being trampled on doesn't matter, because in a democracy, the majority rules. Well, no. You know what? In a democracy, the government is supposed to be protecting the minority rights, and they're not doing that. So you know what? They've lost their moral authority. I've said this before, and once again, they're just giving people more reason to opt out, right? So, and like you said, this is a personal thing that everybody's going to have to do, but you have to do this on principle. Are you going to become a slave and kowtow to the master, or will you stand up and resist and protect your freedom? This is the question you're going to have to ask next year. Get ready.
Well, we do have an alternative, and this is still a democracy, and we do have an elections. Okay. We'll probably have another election, within a year, and we'll have another opportunity to defeat this government. We almost got it done last time, except for a few missteps. And I know we can do it next time too, because I think certainly for National Firearms Association, we want to keep this a free and legal right in Canada. We want to keep this a legally maintained right and a cultural tradition for Canadians. We don't want to be outlaws.
No,
okay.
And I think there's a little bit of time there too. We touched on this on our last talk, that the government they don't have anything in place right now to go out and start gun seizures and tracking people down and stuff. There's no infrastructure there. There's nothing there yet. So I'm curious to see myself what they come up with before the deadline, whether there's going to be an extension, I don't know. I very much doubt they're going to talk about grandfathering again. I think that's dead in the water. But I'm curious to see, because right now I don't believe they're even close to, definitely not close to a buyout, but even trying to go out and start these supposed seizures and stuff. They're nowhere near that as far as planning goes.
No.
I really don't think they thought about the logistics of this. Okay. I really think they thought, in their panic as a government to try and demonstrate that they were protecting, the safety of Canadians on this issue and others, this government has a real problem with that. I think they thought, well, and as usual with firearms laws in Canada, we'll just make an announcement. We'll figure out how to do it later. Yep. We don't have to explain it. We don't have to have a plan. We'll figure out how to do it later. And it was the same thing with long gun registration. Okay.
They also hired a company, like they hired IBM to build this buyback program, and from what we've seen is IBM is looking at Australia, New Zealand, and they're trying to bring that into Canada, but I mean different culture over here. We're farther spread apart. There's so much infrastructure, and then they have to go by a budget. And I don't know if the government's given them a budget yet, but I'm pretty sure IBM's going, hey, and we talked about this on one of our NFA talks where we said it's going to be over $756 million. IBM's probably saying, hey, we're going to be in the billions. This is like the long gun registry, where it's just going to continuously cost. It's not going to get wrapped up in 6 months. We're looking at an ongoing process of at least probably 5 years. So now you've got employees you're paying for 5 years. This is going to be an ongoing thing. And what?
And you know what? When you have back-to-back majority governments and no opposition in Ottawa, you can get away with that. But it's a different time. It's a different issue. And you know what? I hate to say that, and for any liberals that care to hear it, you've completely destroyed your credibility on this issue. all your claims of the past that we don't want to take your guns. Registration isn't about confiscation. We just care about the safety of Canadians. They can no longer credibly have any moral authority on this issue.
Absolutely. I mean, if
it's a question of their authority too. And we all know what happened here not that long ago. An incident where a firearms or a gunsmith was shot and killed by police. My question is how are they going to do it? Are they going to do it the same way they did that one? There's a bunch of questions on that. We've been following it closely, and we don't have a lot of facts. That Charles actually could probably comment on it more than I can. He's been following it closely, and it just my question is how are they going to do this?
Yeah, we've all got a long experience in the firearms community. Certainly myself, and there are Canadians out there, and we all know them, okay, who are so deeply passionate about this issue. I don't want to see them placed in a situation where they have to make that decision, okay, because that doesn't have only ramifications on themselves, their families. That also has ramifications on the future of this country. Okay. Canada, I think we share a common vision of Canada, the type of people that we are, the type of country that this is. Okay. And thankfully, in the past, we've had very, very few instances that sort of call that into question. Yeah, every country does. There are violent incidents that make us sit back and go, what went wrong there? We don't want a repeat of that. How do we treat our citizens better so they're not placed in that situation? I know these people. I don't want them placed in that situation where they have to make a choice, because once that happens, and if the wrong thing happens, this country's never going to be the same again.
Sure enough.
That's a good point, Blair. But sometimes there's not even a choice to be made. Sometimes you might be sitting at your kitchen table cleaning your shotgun after you've been out duck hunting, and you didn't make a choice to do anything. And when somebody comes to your door with the idea that he's going to seize firearms from your house, he's going to be pretty focused on looking at firearms, and you happen to have one in front of you. That's my other point on this whole thing. I talk to people every day, and people are confused and they don't know what they're going to do and stuff. But you know what? They don't even have to do anything. They could be sitting at their house at a kitchen table, and it could go bad real quick. That's what scares me.
And you know what's to blame for this? The toxic liberal agenda on guns. Because to the liberals, anybody with a gun in this country, and especially if you're law-abiding, you have a license, you have complied with the law, we're a danger to public safety all of the time. So for any reason, the police have to go to their houses. Well, hey, they know there's a firearms license attached to that house. There may be registrations attached to that house. So it's automatically a danger going in. And this toxic liberal propaganda in regards to this affects law enforcement agencies and law enforcement policies as well. When they go in with the hand on the gun, why? Firearms license, maybe even registrations. Oh, you own a handgun. Hands on the gun, because they're ready for anything, because you're a danger to public safety. And that's wrong.
You're absolutely right.
The police, there's a lot of police firearms enthusiasts. I know a lot of policemen. Police are good people, but what this liberal government is forcing them to do is narrow their mindset and their focus, and it throws everything out of whack. Because a normal guy in a normal situation cleaning his shotgun on the kitchen table would not be a threat. But the fact, with all this liberal propaganda and pushing their thoughts towards the police, it makes their area, their focus go narrow, and that's when accidents happen. And that's when things happen. We're not going to blame the police. We're not going to. I've talked to policemen and stuff, and the NFA is pro-police. We're not anti-police. We're not anti-anybody. But it's what the government forces people to do on both sides is what the big problem is.
And the big thing about this is the rhetoric coming from the government. They're the ones that are creating the narrative for people to follow. Or the social media party out there that's being paid by the federal government right now. They pick this up, they run with it, because they've been given their green light to gaslight us and demonize us, right? But like you said, Blair, this is very dangerous, right? So, I mean, in most circumstances, if you've got a situation where you do have, police coming in to do a search warrant thing, most people will comply, of course, right? Even the people that are going to, they're planning to resist and possibly, engage in, civil disobedience. It's going to be a peaceful thing, right? But we all know that's never perfect. I mean, in India, when they had their situation, Gandhi preached about peaceful civil disobedience, right? And of course, that went sideways, left, right, and center. That's the part of resistance. Now, like you said, Blair, we don't want to open up that that Pandora's box because our country will never be the same for sure. That's exactly what you said. The trust in this government, unfortunately, is gone, right? They operate with their hands on the lever, but they're doing it without, I sincerely believe, without the folks' consent. That's going to come to light real soon.
Well, I think we've covered that.
Again.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, this is great. I think we pretty much covered season 2. We had roughly about 20 episodes, or this is the 20th. Next year, what are we looking forward to, guys? What do we think? Are we?
Well, it really depends on the life of this government. I mean, we'll see how the OIC pans out. We'll see what kind of legislation they try and introduce. But I think we're building up to something politically here, and eventually we're going back to the polls, and this time we will remove Justin.
Absolutely.
And I can assure our viewers that the NFA is going to be working with a vengeance and hard as we've ever worked before this coming year to make sure that everybody keeps their guns. You know what? We're out there all the time. Our directors, our board of directors, our field officers, our regional coordinators, we've got people on this all the time. We're pushing from all directions. Charles is working hard in Ottawa. The NFA has a very good focus on what we need to do, and we're going to go out there and do it.
And remember, we have a lot of friends in politics, a lot of people, a lot of MPs, a lot of MLAs, a lot of politicians who feel exactly the way we do about this too. So we're not alone out there in the wilderness. This is a Canadian right and cultural tradition. It's widely accepted across the country, despite what the Liberals may think. And we're going to make sure that it's finally respected in law, in our culture. We're not going away. We're not going to shut up. And they're going to feel us in the next election.
Yes, and I just want to piggyback on what Rick said too. I mean, we worked really hard the last election. We ran a strong social media campaign. We had billboard signs out there. We had radio ads. We had magazine ads. We ran hard. The next one, we're going to double down. Because, like I said, I'm going to sound like a broken record or repeating myself, but it was make it or break it the last election. And this is it. We really are. This is it.
Every election is make or break. I've seen a lot of these elections.
Right.
I remember a time when, there really wasn't any political hope. I mean, if you think back to the 1990s, there really weren't a lot of political solutions, but everything changes. Everything changes in this country. The politics change, the governments change, governments come, governments go. So while we're dealing with this, while we're getting ready to go into the next federal election, which is not too far off, let's look at the type of government that we want to elect and the firearms law reforms that we want to see happen. Okay? Because it is possible. It's happened. Nobody ever thought the gun registry would ever go. It went. Nobody ever thought there would be any other reforms under the firearms laws. There were. It's not a one-way street anymore.
No, and you know what? The fuel for this. I mean, we are dedicated and passionate about this mission, and we're not giving up. Like Jordan said, we're going to be doubling down. Is money. So we're getting into a new year. I call on everybody to donate generously to the NFA, join up, become a field officer, and get involved at the grassroots so that we can fund the fight for you. So that's what we're kind of looking for.
And that's right. And another thing that's really encouraging for me is I'm seeing yet another generation, a new generation that is getting involved politically in this issue. That generation that came after Bill C-68, after the gun registry was gone, got into guns and is seeing their rights and freedoms under attack now. They're mad as hell and they're getting involved. So, hey, I mean, this fight is never going to be over, but there's always going to be Canadians out there who will stand up and fight for it.
Oh, Charles, you brought a gun with you.
Show and tell.
So, Charles, for everybody that's tuning in through one of our podcasts, why don't you tell us what that gun is?
It's a little Beretta 22. This was actually Israeli air service surplus. The Israeli airlines had they had these officers on each one of the planes, and this is what they carried. Look at examples where some terrorists were dispatched with this gun. It's a small caliber, and I can tell you that it's very accurate. And if you have a fast load on this thing, it can it's very good for target shooting and whatever you want to use it for. So yeah, it's one of my little toys. My daughters love this. I can't see the sights on this anymore because of my eyes, but anyway, things change. Anyway, that's my little toy.
Yeah. See, I brought one. I brought one as well. I brought the Freedom Ordnance FX9, and it's the short barrel version. So unfortunately, the government knows that I do have this. And you know what? I bought this one when we did our meet and greet at Silverdale. They have Lance Shooting Supplies. I walked in the store, and at that time I was kind of peeved off at the government. I said, I'm not going to buy any more guns until I find out where we settle with this. But then they keep saying something stupid like they're going to ban another gun, and of course this is how I retaliate by buying one myself, right? So for anyone, if you've never shot an FX9, They are solid. They're great shooters. This one, it was nice. It was a package. It came with the red dot, so I didn't have to go out and get one. All I had to do was sight it in. Yeah. One of my go-to guns now, since the government seems to be decreasing my list of firearms that I can legally use. Right. So.
Yeah. I call out to the younger shooters out there. You know what, guys? We need to change some laws so you guys can have these too, because these things are fun to shoot.
Amen.
This is there's no reason why I have a prohibit and you can't. Help us out. That's part of our fight to knock back some of those ridiculous classification laws. And, we need all the help you can get. Like I call to all the young people out there, you know what? Everybody should have one of these on the range because they are an absolute hoot to shoot.
So that's a great point. I just want to say this as well, too. Before the government was signaling about banning the AR-15, we were instrumental in getting people to buy AR-15s. I think it was they bought 30,000 or something in 4 months, something like that. So you remember Bill Blair? We had a great little cartoon about
AR-15 salesman of the year, right?
Yeah. Okay, so they're talking about taking away your handguns. Don't buy one, buy two. Yeah. Right? This is the way you retaliate. Right? That is called civil resistance. Do not kowtow to this. Do not be afraid. Buy your handguns. Lands is a great store to go to too, as well, and as well as Blair as well.
Yeah. It just that's the thing. We've got a big fight on our hands, people, and we need all the help we can get. Like I say, let's get some of these laws changed. Let's get the younger generations having the fun with these. You know what? Just going back there, a 2-inch barrel 357 Magnum, man, that's about as much fun as you can have with your clothes on. I'm telling you.
And at the end of the day, this stuff is property. Your father might have a 2-inch barrel Smith & Wesson. Why can't you hold the registration for it? It's ridiculous. You cannot. It is absolutely unacceptable to treat people's property this way. They have no excuse. Let's change these laws. We can do it.
It's
absolutely. So I'm looking forward to 2022. I think we're gonna wrap it up there since this is the season 2 wrap up show. So Thank you, everybody that's been tuning in, giving us support, sending us messages through our social media saying they love the show. I love being on the show. I love working with everybody here, and we have some great talks. I look forward to 2022 doing this again. We're gonna have some live events as well. We've got a few things planned for 2022, and it's going to be a lot of fun. And hopefully we can maybe make some leadway with this government as well while we're at it. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in, and we'll see you in season 3.
Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Thanks for listening to this episode of NFA Talk. Like and follow the NFA on social media and sign up to become a member.